Hi.
Hello.
Excellent. Sound is present. You are present. Everything is all good. I'm trying to make sure that everything looks right and is centered. Um, uh, Beautiful. Well, it looks like quite a few people have tuned in exactly at 8. So I think
Nice.
we can get started. This is pretty exciting. Um, uh, so I'm Cassandra, as you know, if you came to my page directly, and I do a weekly, um, um, I guess, segment where we talk about divination or topics thereof. It's called Tea and Tarot Tuesday because I like alliteration. But in general, it's just topics that that myself and other people who join in, just want to talk to when it comes to using our various abilities and growing those abilities. And so we're here to answer questions. We're here to be present for y'all and to grow and learn together. So tonight, the topic of conversation is scrying. Now, the lovely Dr. Brock White, can I just call you Leah today, or we call you Chosen Eyes? Because that's where you guys can find her if you're looking for her on
Chosen Eyes
Instagram.
works.
Chosen Eyes, cool. All right, so Chosen Eyes 9 is your handle on Instagram, yes?
Just about everything. Instagram and Twitter as well. If you're looking for me on Facebook, it's just Chosen Eyes. But if you type in Chosen Eyes on Instagram, I'm one of the first people to pop up. You can't miss me.
Excellent, excellent. So this lady, I've had the pleasure of doing a bunch of different events. Like we've done a lot of witches markets together. We've had the opportunity to speak on several occasions. This right here is really nice because we get to actually talk more theory and practice and learn more about the way that we both see and view what we work with.
Mhm.
So I'm really excited to be able to have this conversation with you and to learn from you and to share information. So I'm really happy
Likewise.
that you decided. What'd you say?
I said likewise. I'm always open to collaborate and share and learn from one another, and it's always great when women can support women. So I'm totally here for that.
Yes, me too. Me too. And I've always, had great love and admiration for you. I think you're an amazing woman. So I'm really happy that you wanted to be part of this today. I'm going to shut off my heater
Likewise, thank you.
so it doesn't. Thank you. All right. So
Really
you were
quickly,
the.
I
Yes,
wanted to ask you, your account is not private, is it?
it is not.
Okay,
No.
I wanted to be sure. I invited some people off of my list to join in on the live. So I wanted to make sure. One of them said it said message unavailable. So I just want to make sure.
No, it used to be private at one point, but it is not anymore.
No
Um,
worries. We should be good.
awesome. Excellent. I hope everyone that you invited is able to tune in. I will post it afterwards on both my YouTube channel and on here with IGTV. So yeah,
Perfect.
be present for everybody. You can share it if you'd like.
Hey.
So you were the person who said that you wanted to do scrying, that you wanted to talk about scrying.
Yep.
So tell me why it is that you wanted to do that particular topic.
How often do you hear anyone talking about reading mirrors or scrying? You know, um, I don't want to call it a lost art, but it's definitely not one of the most popular. Usually, when people are looking for some form of divination, they're looking for tarot, they're looking for palm, they're looking for mediumship, clairvoyance, which are all, I mean, all totally under my wheelhouse, and I know yours to an extent as well. So, um, and they definitely tend to get glamorized in Hollywood, but scrying is definitely not something that's talked about or offered very often as far as teaching and workshops, which I do offer. So I wanted to talk about the underdog in the divinatory practices.
hmm So, do you offer scrying when, like some of the festivals that we've done together? Is
Mhm.
scrying one of the things that you actually offer?
I do, and of course, it's something that I have to quite often explain to people that ever, when we're bidding for events in order to be a part of an event. Usually, they're like, "What's this mirror thing?" And so I find myself, educating on it quite often. But it's probably it's the first form of divination I ever learned. I am self-taught in it.
Mhm.
And it came to me like breathing. For those people who don't know, scrying is literally reading anything in a divinatory capacity that bends light. So I scry with mirrors. I scry with actually like mirrors that you see your reflection in. Um, Water is something that most people have seen me do in events because it's pretty easy in large crowds. Fire, I can scry with air, believe it or not. Like anything that bends light, gemstones, you can definitely use it as a portal to to the multiverse. I will also point out Harry Potter kind of made it a thing with the Pensieve. Essentially, that's scrying, that's mirror reading. So being able to look through the actual mirror as opposed to staring at it, which is something I find my students have a tendency to do. It's kind of the habit you got to break. But I hope that answered your question. I hope that wasn't too tangential.
Oh no, actually, I think that's wonderful because you're giving everybody and we never want to assume that people have all of that information. We want to actually, so thank you for explaining what that was. Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah, I know that as far as divination goes, scrying is one of the oldest forms of divination. I know it was used in ancient Egypt
Yeah.
by the Persians, and they talked about that. And I usually typically only use it in ritual. I don't use it in
Mm-hmm.
most spaces, but I think, I mean, the crystal ball is one of our, you know,
Yeah.
one of the quintessential pictures of somebody doing fortune telling or
Yeah.
divination overall. So, have you? So you said that you actually teach classes on
Mhm.
scrying. Yeah,
Yep,
and
I've actually so through Minks and Muse here in Austin, Texas. Check them out if you're in the Austin area, or even if actually we're offering remote classes. So by all means, Minks and Muse. Um, I've taught Intro to Scrying, which it was my first time offering it just before the pandemic. It was a really cool class to develop because I never really thought about like the actual process of scrying, like breaking it down for those who are not familiar with actually doing it. I'm like, oh, what exactly do I do? What is the first step, right? Because it just comes so naturally. But that was really fun, and being able to offer a different perspective on what divination is and understanding what a portal is. I think that is foundationally, and you know me, I'm all about foundation.
mhm.
Foundationally, that is something we don't think about when it comes to divinatory tools. You are opening a portal. You know, as a medium, I am a walking portal, right? So, as the reader, you are the vessel, so therefore you are the portal as are your tools. So it's important to really ground and understand what that looks like. For those of you who don't know what a portal is, it's essentially a gateway or a doorway that um, opens energy and information between our realm and the spirit realm or any other dimensions that you may be trying to reach. So to offer perspective and clarity and guidance. So I am always about teaching that foundational knowledge before we delve deeper. But yes, Raisha, there is a scrying class.
Yeah,
Parker Crimson, if you want me to teach it again.
and Raisha, thank you so much for putting up the Minx Muses. I
Handle.
guess, yes, handle. Thank you. Words are sometimes hard for me. So, yeah, thank you for putting that up there. So as you said, you are opening a portal. You are creating a space of connection and being able to speak in other realms or however it is that you view your cosmology.
Right.
Part of teaching that, how do you teach protection? Because that's a serious issue when we talk about, linking up with different portals.
Absolutely. The very first thing and Raisha can attest to this, she just took my Tarot 2.0 class. So I always, not force, but highly encourage all my students to center themselves in the sense of being honest about where they are in time and space, how they're feeling. Um, because if you're honest about how you feel, then it's that much easier to understand whether or not you're essentially, well, can I use profanity?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's one
It,
of my fucking favorite things.
Perfect. It's easier to realize if it's your shit or somebody else's shit. Because if you don't know where your shit is, where your baggage is, and your energy signature, then there's no way for you to understand where someone else's is, right? Or to know whether or not what you're coming up against is your shit, or if there's intersectionality between your shit and the person that you're reading for. So I always start there. I always recommend a great piece of onyx, especially when scrying, onyx as well as black tourmaline. You can go heavier with jet if you want to. I don't recommend and rainbow obsidian, right? I actually have a scrying mirror that is rainbow obsidian, which is traditionally what is used in scrying. You usually use a rainbow obsidian, which is black and has like a sheen, rainbow sheen. You use it, it's usually like a small chalice that you can do, or a flat surface. Those are my top things to help with grounding. For protection, I recommend always creating a salt barrier around yourself, if that's a circle, or if that's whatever geometry is sacred for you in your practice, creating a salt barrier between you and the spirit world. And that's literally putting salt around your perimeter. Covering your crown, right? Because it's a huge entry portal. I am a huge proponent of Florida water. Some of the work I do is hoodoo based, so Florida water, not on your crown, never put on your crown, but Florida water if you need to get some shit off of you. And I keep it simple. Salt water is amazing.
Uh-huh.
And a quick pinch, you know what I mean? Like if you're scrying or doing something at an event, you know me, I've always said like, get salt water real quick if you're at a restaurant. Like we normally do events, that serve food. I always ask them, can I have a glass of water and some salt? And they're like, okay. And I'm like, mm-hmm. Because you know that you're inevitably going to come across somebody with some shit. And until you can get home and actually do like your spiritual bath or your cleanses and really like ground some shit out, it's a great, quick SOS. I also recommend grounding in earth energy before you scry, only because even though you can scry with any of the 4 elements or 5 elements technically, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you can go outside and ground, which I know it's hard to do during COVID, but if you can go outside and ground in the earth element, it has a great way of rooting you, but also closing doors in and of itself. Water is a perfect conduit for opening, right? And earth is great for being able to close and cement. So,
I actually ground with water.
really?
I have no earth in my chart. I'm basically water and fire, a whole bunch of that. But and I don't know if that's what contributes to my being able to ground. But I found that like standing on earth didn't really work for me. None of that was effective for me. But water, if I put my feet in water or wash my face, that grounds me instantly. So.
If that works for you, I'm all for it. I'm going to have to turn my phone, I'm sorry, to the side, only because I do not want to die. I don't want my technology to die on you. Is this okay? If not,
yeah, no, that's fine. Absolutely.
You know what? I'll just hold it.
You gotta do.
Cool. But yeah, I reckon the only reason why I recommend earth is because, like I said, I've noticed that it tends to be something that not only grounds me out, but like I said, as far as closing the door, closing the portal, think of it as like a mountain or like a huge boulder full of, not boulder, but a large amount of dirt going into a trench. It's like filling a hole in a way. And then to an extent, it also lays things to rest. But if water is something that's able to sever that connection and safely close that for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mentioned that because I know several people that I've told, that they've had that discussion with me, and they found that earth, that actual physical earth doesn't work as well for them, and that water was the way that they were able to ground. So I think that we have to really, like, that where the practice comes in and being able to connect with what works for you. Have you ever used, like, for instance, when you talk about earthing and being able to, use the energy of the soil to connect, maybe like having a potted plant or something with you while you're...
Absolutely. Potted plants, believe it or not, clay if you're a person who enjoys like the feel of like Play-Doh or just like any type of
Mhm.
things, clay, gemstones, that's earth energy, right? Even though there are other
Yes.
aspects within that, you can totally always hold a gemstone or anything that makes you feel grounded and at peace. Leaves, plants themselves, like I have pothos all throughout my home, and sometimes, if a leaf happens to fall off, I'll hold that when I'm scrying. Flowers in your hair, for those of us who like to adorn our hair with flowers, that's totally helpful. It doesn't always happen to be go outside, hug a tree, which I just happen to like to do. It doesn't always have to be that way, or walking outside if you don't have access to be able to do so. Be creative. I'll even go so far as to say something that may seem crazy. Flour, like the actual like baking flour. I know where a lot of people are gluten free and things of that nature, but you've got what you need in your kitchen.
Yeah.
You know? And sometimes even taking pen to paper, so taking something from that air element where portals tend to lie, right?
Hmm.
And actually writing it on paper, which is earth in and of itself, being able to ground out and literally, close, or like being able to close a portal that way. I've been able to do that and have incorporated that practice with some of my spell work. So there's a
Uh-huh.
multitude of ways to incorporate the earth element. It doesn't have to just be, me, I'm not cookie cutter. It doesn't have to be go outside, do this. It goes back to, like you said, personal practices.
Mhm. Yeah, and really knowing where your energy sits. I wanted to also just mention to everybody that's watching out there that questions, we love questions. It's a great jumping off point, and we want to be able to touch upon any aspect of scrying that y'all want to know about. So
Yep.
please feel free to write those in the comments, and we will definitely do our best to get to those. So, so you mentioned you can scry with any of the elements. What are, I mean, I personally have used the black mirror. I've
Mhm.
created fairy mirrors, which, perhaps we could touch on that at some point. Fire, water, or the smoke and water. I haven't, I guess, candle. Using candles, I usually look at the smoke aspect of that. But what other aspects? I mean, what else have you used for your scrying practice?
So as earthy as most people find me to be, I am actually very fire and air dominant.
Mm-hmm.
So I am definitely a pyro. So the more fire, the better.
Yeah.
Candles, like I like matches just because I like the smell. Lately some of my friends have had bonfires in their fire pits, and I'm like, yes, right. So totally all aspects of fire. As a kid, I used to I did it the most when we would be window shopping. So like storefronts, like just regular glass. At dinner time, I would, we would have our, glasses to drink out of, and I would do it up with glasses. Um, I've actually read someone smoke before, like they were smoking, and I read their actual smoke. The smoke from incense. What else have I tried with? I have several orbs, crystal balls, for those of you who are not used to the technical term. Gosh, I can't think of anything I haven't. Water is just something I tend to do more of because water, I use water and salt, so technically water and earth in that capacity, right? And water is kind of self-cleansing. Salt definitely helps with that. So if you're scrying for multiple people back to back, it's kind of self-cleansing and self-generating. And you don't have to reset by, pouring out that person's water and, I don't want to say wasting water, but essentially wasting water.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, one of the spaces that I prefer to do scrying in, or I guess that's part of my practice. I don't know if it's a preference really. I think it just ends up that way. Is, full moon. I typically, and dark moon occasionally as well. I use water and then the reflection of whatever aspects of light are present and the moon on there. And part of the major aspect of scrying is being able to soften your gaze and not look so directly. One thing that I found interesting is that neurodivergent people have no difficulty softening our gaze, but
Yep.
people who are neurotypical, that is something that has to be taught. How do you teach that?
I I try my best. That's one. Because if you are neurotypical, there's a certain rigidity about the way how you look at
Yeah.
and perceive reality, right? Um, those of us who are not neurotypical for across the spectrum, we we float in a different way with our perception, like how we perceive physical construct, physical, tangible, all of this, right? I typically tell my students to imagine that you were window shopping, right? But when you go and you're window shopping, you're not looking at the glass itself. You're looking through the glass at the actual outfit that you like, or at the actual item that you're wanting to purchase. So it's much
Hmm.
the same way. You're looking through to the thing that you want to see. You're not looking directly at the barrier between you and said item. So the item in this case would be what you're trying to see or connect to on the other side, right? It's literally a door. You're looking through the door. You're not looking at the door like, oh, wow, this is made of oak. Like, no, that's not how this works. You very much are looking to say, like, okay, I'm looking through here. And then you have to relinquish a certain amount of control to allow what needs to come through while trusting in your ability to repel what does not need to come through. So it's very much a submissive, dominant kind of play that's happening simultaneously between you and spirit. And it takes a while to get used to it, but once you get used to it, it's really quite cool. We did have one incident in class where we were using an antique mirror. And yeah, which FYI, a Greenwich, antique mirrors hold a lot of energy. A lot of energy. And if you can't trace the ownership back to whatever, you're going to need to do some thorough cleansing. And I'll talk more about how to cleanse your mirrors and how to, make sure that they're warded, and protected. Excuse me. But we had an incident where an entity on the other side was trying to swap places with one of the students, and we were able to quickly rectify that. But that is definitely something, going back to your point about protection, where grounding in your energy, and she was able to know, like, this is not my shit, this is something else over here, and we
Yeah.
were able to nip it in the bud very quickly.
So, when you're teaching the classes and you have everyone sitting down and be, talking about scrying and then just getting in there and actually doing it, have you set up sacred space?
Yep. Prior to class, I come in and I consecrate the area. We cleanse the space. We invite ancestors and spirit to come in. I always say you always want to let spirit in to dance with you, and allow for, it's not about proper communication, but the highest good to be done. Right? There's a sense of altruism to the work that we do as practitioners, and integrity. And so I always, whatever needs to come through, allow it to be something that comes through, as opposed to trying to come in and pretend that we're Merlin and will something to happen, because, of course, make plans and watch spirit laugh, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I always make sure that the space is cleansed, blessed, consecrated, all of those things before we ever touch anything.
Yeah, one of the things that I know from my own courses and working with people in that very sensitive spiritual space is that, spirit will show us what we are supposed to see. And sometimes it can be so heavy and really difficult for students to process. How do you help them walk through that?
I remind them that spirit is here to show them what they need to know and not what they want to know. That is first and foremost. It is not spirit's job to tell you what you want to hear, more so what you need to hear. That you're a guest in spirit's world, and that no news is really bad news. It's about how you process and allow yourself to be humbled by the lesson that is here or the opportunity for learning, right? It's all opportunity for learning. I actually just touched on this in the tarot class too, and Rachel can tell you, like, and I want your opinion on this, especially with tarot. There are cards that each reader associates a very visceral reaction to, right? Like for me, it's the Eight of Cups. I'm like, ugh, I hate that card, right? But it's only because of how it shows up for me, typically, right? But the Eight of Cups is not a bad card. It's a card that actually has a lot to do with perseverance, overcoming. I mean, there are some heavier aspects to it too, but there's also a lot of positive with it. And so when it comes to teaching about how to interpret the lessons, it's like, it's not that you're a fuck up. It's just, it's showing you where there's still areas of growth that need to take place. And, maybe you're not realizing that something that you're doing is cyclical and it's to your detriment. So let's figure out how to excise that and then be able to move forward in a healthier capacity.
Yes.
I try to be as proactive as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and being, energy sensitive too, when you're sitting with a bunch of people and teaching, you can sort of feel and know how each person is reacting and how their energy is being affected. Now, given that most of our classes now are virtual, how has that affected your teaching style?
So apparently I'm really good at virtual teaching. I think part of it is because as a medium, I'm pretty empathic. And so sometimes, large crowds are like sensory overload, which I feel like you can also attest to at times where you're just like, okay,
yeah,
extra ground. But virtually, the computer for me becomes kind of a mirror, right? And so I'm looking at all these faces on Zoom and I'm kind of able to look at all these mini mirrors, right? It's been great. I feel like I actually get to connect and to be a bit more hands-on and one-on-one. So, and actually like delve deeper into a more individualized approach and not so much having more anecdotes, but like direct examples and real-time correction, as opposed to some instances in class where you're like, okay, time crunch, I got to go through all these people. There's not really a lot of time. You know what I mean? Like the pacing is different. The energy flow is different. And to an extent, if I want to break out into groups and have people do like group work, because I view the work that we do as sacred and needs to be treated as confession. You're able to have a certain level of confidentiality and people don't feel as embarrassed. And so part of doing the work is vulnerability.
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
And right. And somehow with Zoom and Google Classrooms, people feel more vulnerable and are willing to be that in those spaces. So that's definitely helped, especially with not dealing with skepticism and, people who are looking for you to wow them. And I've literally had someone take one of my classes in person and it's like, I wanted you to prove me wrong or to wow me. It's like, well, that's not my job.
I actually love those clients, though. Those are the ones who, when they sit down with me, I'm like, oh, give them to me.
Right.
But still, at the same time, it's also, there's a bit of arrogance on their part that sort of is frustrating. One of the things I teach a lot of classes on Zoom as well. And I find that because of the separate little compartments that everybody is placed in, there's not the melting together of everyone's energy. And so, those of us connected to our empathic selves, you can sort of feel what's coming through with each person. So,
right.
Yeah. So that's excellent. One of the things that I did want to touch on is fairy scrying and fairy mirrors, because that's a whole other realm that we are able to, the way I view fairies, maybe I should put that out there, is that they are interdimensional. They cross into our space and we cross into theirs, and then we're able to connect with those beings that we term fairies. So have you done much work with scrying and being able to connect with the fae on that level?
Not intentionally. Now I will say, full disclosure.
Yeah.
And I say that because I've had the Fae entities come to me while scrying.
Mhm.
I'm like, ah, hello. Uh, Typically, I get more of, okay, how do I explain this? Have you ever seen the movie Interstellar?
I'm not sure that I have actually. I can't
No
remember.
worries. No worries. Um, the only way I can describe it is it's literally like, okay, it's kind of Star Trekky, not because I'm a Star Trek fan, but like literally like, okay. I literally see time and space in the sense that everything has vibration, right? Everything has resonance and everything has its own color signature, like signature, right? So
Hmm.
when I'm literally looking into like a void, and then I see our string, right? For those of you who follow string theory, I literally see like our time string, if you will. And then I see all the other multitudes of possibilities of what is happening simultaneously, right? But then I also see the signature for all the other dimensions that are like encapsulating ours. It's kind of weird, but just go with me. And so I see that crossover that happens, but I'm like, when I'm scrying, I'm seeing that crossover, right?
Hmm.
So I see the Fey realm, I see the angelic realm, like, and those beings as they come in. I'm looking at the ancestral realms, right?
Hmm.
Um, all those beings come to visit. So when we talk about religion and different pantheons, like we're all like they are their own individual beings, but we are all talking about the same individuals to an extent in terms of archetype. Not entirely. I know that there's differences, obviously, but it's my belief that many archetypes cross dimensional barriers. So the Fae realm is not one that I have ever intentionally worked with. I will say that there are moments where I'm like, oh, okay, so you're clearly a Fae, and they will identify themselves as such, you know. The ones I've ever encountered have always been hilarious because they're kind of I don't want to call them toddlers, but that's like a persnickety nature, but they're also kind of pranky, and cranky at times, but also very direct. I appreciate the direct nature. But I've
Okay.
never intentionally created a Fae mirror. It is something that I have wanted to learn from one of my girlfriends who's in New Orleans, who very much works with the Fae realm. We just haven't been
Hmm.
able to sync up to do it.
Awesome. Yeah, I would. I create my own Fey mirrors, so I'd be
Oh, I
curious
need to sync
to
up with
hear.
you.
Huh? Yeah, absolutely. I'd also love to hear how your friend does it too, because mine was taught to me by Fey connections that I had, or beings that I work with. So they taught me a way, and I'm sure it is not the only way, as is always the case. So I'd love to hear more about that. Somebody said rules lawyers. Don't know what that means. Um,
Oh, are you saying that the Fae realm rules? Like, it governs lawyers? Freestyle fine art? Is that what you're getting at?
Perhaps we'll see how that comes through. There's always a bit of a lag with the comments. My ADD brain. I had a couple of other things that I wanted to bring up and ask you about, but I
They'll
can't
come back.
remember. Yeah, hopefully, hopefully. Nah, they are rules lawyers. Rules lawyers.
Oh, they're lawyers of rules, like they govern rules, like what it means.
I think we need a bit more clarity on that, if you don't mind, please. In your experience. Yeah, I know that just as with any beings, like, humans, there's such a vast array of personalities and styles of communication. So one of the things that I know in my work with, and some of them, they just, they speak with us on terms that we understand and are able to communicate
Mm-hmm.
with. So, like, my experience of, say, Lilith might be a bit different than your experience with Lilith, because it's just, different people bring out different things in us. So, of course, we bring out different aspects in other people. But yeah, I'd love to know more of what you mean about rules lawyers. I'm not sure I understand that expression, so I don't want to place anything on that. Currently, English is not your first language. I understand that. I am Spider Goddess and Chosen Eyes is right there. So if you wanted to communicate with either of us when you feel like it to let us know about your experiences with the Fae, I'm always down to hear it and have that discussion. Um,
Absolutely.
uh, Oh, yeah, I remember one of the things that I was going to talk about. So when I'm teaching people how to go in and get, information from spirit, in whatever way we're doing it, whether it's journeying or scrying or any divinatory method. And one of the things that I tell them that is important, especially when you're, just tuning in to your abilities and that connection space, is to have a purpose for your scrying or a purpose for your journey. Because and even if it's something just so broad or esoteric as like, what do I need to know today? But having that purpose, so you're not just it's sort of dialing into randomness. Um, do you feel that's important, or how do you express that to your students?
Intention is everything. I mean, so in a class that I teach, magical ethics, shameless plug, I always talk about perception being 9/10 of earthly law, but
Mm-hmm.
intention is 9/10 of spiritual law.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if your intention is fucked up, then fuck the 10% left, that's left over. Like 90% of everything you have to do is rooted in your intention, right? So
Yes.
90% of all magic is intentional. So if you've got the 10% that involves elbow grease and knowing the herbs and the chants and the practices, that's great. But if your intention is askew and your perception of all this is fucked up, then I don't know what to tell you. Because that's when, as practitioners, that's when we get the people who are like, I hexed my boyfriend because I was petty. How do I undo this? And it's just like, well, your intention was fucked up. What did you think was about to happen? You know what I mean? Like,
Uh-huh.
you're like, yeah, uh-huh. So I'm just saying, like, in all honesty, like, that intention is everything. If you don't go into scrying or any divinatory practice without some aspect of what you are rooted in and what your North Star is in the practice, then
Yeah. Then
that's when
basically you're
fuckery
fucked.
ensues. Huh?
Yeah. Then you're quite probably fucked, essentially. Yeah. Yeah.
Without lube.
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, it's really important when you're going into scrying to know what your purpose is, what your goal is, and then to be open, to be ready to be that conduit for spirit and to have that conversation. Now, we all experience things differently, like even just sitting and looking into a bowl of water. You might get that knowing space, you might hear, you
Yep.
might see. Being able to speak, I find it hard for me. I'm a very visual, but I also have the claircognizance aspect. So I speak in visual terms just because that's how I relate to the world most often. And I really have to be careful to not use those terms exclusively, because then people find that, oh, well, that's not how I experience
Right.
spirit. And I don't want to keep anybody from fully, connecting to the way that they experience it. So do
Right.
you find that,
I agree with that. I
you know,
wholeheartedly agree with that. Like, my sister who's on here, hi Kenny Boho, um, she her ears get clogged when she's receiving messages whenever I'm teaching her how to scry, like, or even whenever, like, that's how she assimilates. And she has a lot of water energy, much like you. So like her ears get that whole swimmer's ear kind of clogging to them, and they start popping. For
mm,
me, I start feeling warm,
mm,
especially like in my crown and in my third eye. Like, all of this just gets hot, right? I have students, like one student actually gets cold, and it's not from the standpoint of like you have somebody who's coming in from one of those realms where body temperature would drop. Like, she, regardless of who she's channeling, she gets cold. I I think it's also important to note something. Many of us get very hungry when we're doing this work because you are metabolizing very differently.
I've not experienced that.
I will say, especially if I'm channeling as a medium, I'm hungry after a reading. I'm
Interesting.
starving. And I've spoken to many mediums who were like, yep, that's a medium thing.
When I do mediumship, I
You
get
don't get hungry?
energized and like hyper.
I am in the moment, like when I'm doing it, I am. But like
Yeah.
when I could ground and I'm coming out, I'm like, where's the food? Where's the drink? And it's not like alcohol, but like I have to consume. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, just know that you may or may not experience that, but much like Spider Goddess is saying, like it hits all of us differently. Um, some people are definitely more auditory. Some people are more visual and have to draw it out. Some people can't talk about what they see. I have a student who does not see but only hears. I have a student who literally has to act out as if they are in the like real time in the moment. In order to they're not under possession. At first I thought they were like, actually like going under possession, but no, like they actually have to do kind of like the celestial model in order to work, like process information of what they're seeing, because in real time they are in that time and space. So it hits us all differently, but it's all beautiful. And I always hold space in my classes for everyone to experience the divine in a way that best suits them, in a way that's safe and healthy.
Yeah, and I think it's really important that when we try to force that experience, then we end up blocking ourselves. So to just accept the way that you process, and the more that we process, the more different. What I've found is the different avenues open up for us. We might experience one day this way, another day in this manner, and just to be thankful and live in that space and accept it, and then you're abilities will blossom and grow. There is a question that I did see, and I wanted to mention it before we forget. Someone asked how that we both perceive and feel about Ouija boards. I have a very definite opinion. I would like for you to express yours first, if you'd like to do so.
No, absolutely. I am not anti-Ouija boards. It is definitely a divinatory tool. It is a portal. I think it is something that needs to be used wisely and properly, like any other divinatory tool. I think tarot gets abused and bastardized quite often. Ouija boards do too. Thank you, Hollywood, and its horrible portrayal of it.
Yeah.
As someone who grew up in film and television behind the scenes, like I have seen where they fucked that shit up. But anyway, that's a whole different soapbox. I am not against it. I don't think that it needs to be sold at children's toy stores.
Yeah.
Or Walmart. Like those are divinatory tools that do not need to be in everyone else's hands. I'm just gonna say it. It may sound elitist. I don't care in this instance. As someone who, again, works with portals on a regular basis, before you use any divinatory tool, you need to have proper training, because you can open doors that you don't know how to close. You can easily get misled by entities that are very good about lying about who they are, their intentions, what they're there for, and it can be incredibly dangerous. But if you're trained properly, it can definitely be a tool for help and healing.
Yeah, one of the ways that I explain Ouija boards when this question has been brought to me previously, it's like picking up a party line, or an old phone and just dialing a bunch of random ass numbers, and hoping that you're going to get grandma on the other one.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because most of the time, and a lot of people, they are sold as a board game. I have gone into many homes where people are like, hey, there's some weird shit going on here. I need help cleaning out my space. And come to find out, that was one of the ways that they were bringing energy in and created an unhealthy situation. So I 100% agree with you that, it's not a for everyone situation. You should get, it's sort of, you're not going to do surgery and not be a doctor trained
Hopefully.
in whatever. Yeah,
Hopefully.
that's it. Okay, I
I've seen
see
some
it.
stuff on YouTube where people have taken out their, excised their own stuff. It's kind of creepy, but yes, it is like giving someone a jackhammer who's never been trained. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So don't play with power tools unless you know how to play with power tools. But I wouldn't call necessarily Ouija boards power tools. I think they are a tool that can be improperly used way too easily.
I'm going to say it again, like tarot.
Yeah, yeah. One of the when I'm teaching tarot, of course, there's the energy aspect that is one of the first things I teach, and ethics is the next part because I don't think that we need to be wandering around like there are many times that I'll do a reading for somebody and I'm getting so much information. I'm like, look, I am not equipped to handle this. I do believe that you should see a therapist because if we give advice to people and we're stepping out of pocket and it's not our time and space and situation to do that, that can be pretty harmful. So I think there are definitely, tarot can be like you got to be careful. You can't just step in and give people all that information willy-nilly.
That, and if you're reading for yourself, it's easy. I've seen where people become addicted to the cards. Um,
Mm, mm.
Having that ease of access as it's perceived, right? Like, oh, well, the tarot has all, it knows all, it has all the answers, right? And it's just like, like, it, like any divinatory tool, even scrying mirrors, have their own soul and own personality. My tarot cards are like my children. Each deck is different. They all have their own voices. They sound different. They feel different energetically when I talk to them. Same thing with my mirrors, right? All of them have. I have one that's old and ancient and cranky, and it's just like, don't bother me today. And then I have another one that's like, pick me, all the time, right?
Uh-huh.
But sometimes they will play tricks on you. Sometimes they'll give you what you want to hear, so you'll shut the fuck up. Sometimes,
Yeah, it's sort of like, we both are moms. So
yeah,
sometimes our children are, we'll be like, hey, mommy, and you're sometimes like, just give me some space. Just need some
yes,
space, then yeah.
yes. Yeah, give me a minute. Just wait. Go over there. Yeah, okay, whatever. Sure. Yeah, that's great. Pretty picture. Bye. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think I have seen where readers or even people who have taken an intro to tarot or any form of divinatory class, right,
Hmm.
get addicted to the unintentionally sometimes to the ease of knowledge and access to be able to navigate their world, and they forget to live their world.
Hmm.
They forget to live in their lives, and there's supposed to be an air of mystery. You're not supposed to have somebody narrating every 5 seconds. Look to follow the right white rabbit. It will lead you to $5 million. Like, that ain't how this shit works, y'all. That ain't how this works.
Uh-huh.
If that were the case, the majority of us that read for you would not be doing some of the things that we do. Just putting that up.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. What we are like, we have 12 minutes left, so I would encourage people if you've got questions to throw them out there so that we can touch on them. But I wanted to circle back around to something that you said earlier. You mentioned that you wanted to speak a little bit more about preparing your scrying tools when we were talking about an antique mirror. I don't know if you wanted to come back to that.
Sure. For those of you who weren't privy to that part of the conversation, sometimes when we're looking at mirrors, especially if we're talking about mirrors that are actually like visual mirrors where you're like looking at your person in the mirror, right, to see how great you look that day. If they are antique and have been passed down intergenerationally, or you get it at a thrift store or something like that, they hold energy. Why? Because it is literally a window into someone's soul, right? Someone's eyes, their window to their soul, are gazing into this thing, and then there's an imprint made, right? Energy is neither created nor destroyed. So you get energy trapped in mirrors, hence the reason why Native Americans and many other indigenous cultures did not like having their pictures taken, because it took a mirror to create their image to come over to another side, right? So it's a portal. That being said, it is important to know, if you can, like if you didn't purchase the mirror firsthand, to understand the history behind an antique mirror because you don't know what energy signatures are there. If you are sensitive to energies, try to trust what you feel empathically and energetically from that mirror. If it feels heavy and dank and dark, salt water is my bestie. Okay. I'm always about clearing some shit out in some salt water. I also like using sunlight. I know some people say that's dangerous. It creates a laser. Guess what else it does? It cleanses the fuck out of a mirror. Okay. Angle it properly. Don't angle it directly at the sun. You don't want to start, slicing people's houses in half and shit, starting forest fires. But allow that energy to happen. If you're able to, also, don't look into the mirror. Like this, I know it's hard for some people to do, but whenever I get a new mirror, I make it a point to angle it away from my person, so that way I'm not looking directly into the mirror for the first couple of days that I own it. I cleanse it, have it face down, right? The reflective surface. I have it face down, cleanse it to where the reflective surface is on the bottom, right? Salt water. I like to use oregano oil. I like to use Florida water, oregano oil, and Palo Santo, but also cedar. Scrub the hell out of it, dry, wipe it down to where it's dried off. And even it works well, even if it has like a wooden backing. You can also put it in moonlight. Why? Because mirrors have a reflective surface. The moon in and of itself is a reflective mirror, right? So like attracts like is also able to cleanse like and purify. So you have sun and moon energy that can clear and evaporate it. I recommend clearing it and allowing it to sit 3-day cycle, so 3 moon days, so 3 nights in moonlight, 3 days in sunlight. After that, it should be ready to go. If you still feel like it's a little heavy or has some shit attached to it, repeat and rinse.
Yeah, I think I love the intermediaries, like our spirit guides, our ancestors and such, being able to talk to them and have them also look over the space because, whatever is attached to the mirror, like you said, there, other, portals that can be present or different things attached, energies attached to that can try to deceive us. I mean, we know within ourselves, once we cultivate that space, we can understand what energy is present. But a lot of times, they do try to deceive us because they don't want to go anywhere. They may try to come across as a helpful spirit, but having those intermediaries that will, can speak on our behalfs or, give us information. I think it's also, a great place to go to like ask our guides and our ancestors like, hey, what's up with this? Is this legit? Am I cool here? Like having that conversation I feel is also pretty helpful. Do you work with your ancestors a lot?
Absolutely.
And your guides? Yeah,
absolutely. In fact, today and tonight are the candle mass for Oya. So if you are a devotee or someone who follows Ifa or Santeria or Lukumi traditions, today is the feast day for Oya. So I will be, after I get off with you all, partying it up with some dark chocolate, some popcorn, and some red wine.
Excellent.
So yeah, I do. Ancestral practices are definitely something that are integral part of my work. I am not initiated into any one form of divination or spiritual track, but ancestral practices are definitely what I'm rooted in. And as far as family history is concerned, my maternal family is from the Mississippi Delta, so there's a lot of hoodoo in the bloodline. And then my paternal side is from Missouri, so similar fashion.
Yeah, I got a lot of granny magic in my father's side, so similar practices there. Two Spirit Queer keeps coming up and making some really great points. So I just want to thank you for being present, and they were also thanking us for insight and thoughts, and I really appreciate you tuning in. So I just wanted to acknowledge you and everyone else who showed up today.
Yes, thank you.
So we have 5 more minutes. Any other questions that want to come through, please feel free, or if there's anything we missed, please feel free to reiterate. Was there anything else that you wanted to put out there? I know you've got a couple of classes coming up. Do you want to plug those real quick?
Sure, thanks. So I just finished up Tarot 2.0, but there will be a Tarot 3.0 coming up here in April. Yay, March or April. Um, I will be teaching my first master class the end of February, February 25th, 26th, and 27th. It is called Gaze Adjustment, Intentional Manifestation for Oddballs. So I am personally have always been an oddball and or misfit my entire life, and so I've noticed in teaching, people have asked me, hey, what does it really mean to like intentionally ground and manifest? And, you know, all those other traditional ways of doing it, like visualization boards and all these other things don't work for me. I'm like, it's because you're not cookie cutter. So let's work with all of us non-cookie cutter people and get into what it really means to manifest intentionally, going back to what we talked about, and how to own the fact that your superpower is that you don't fit in. So that's the masterclass. I'm also teaching a medical astrology course with the lovely 11 moons. I will be focusing on traditional Chinese medicine as the backdrop for the medical perspective of that. So we will touch briefly on the Chinese clock, but not entirely. But we will be focusing on certain organ systems, especially as it pertains to COVID and how to navigate all the transits happening right now. And 11 moons will be giving a perspective on astrology and how to interpret those energies in alignment with TCM. It is a 2-day course, 2-day workshop. So February the 11th is the first day and February 18th. And if you can't come in person, you can totally still pay for the class and get all the digital downloads, including the access to the actual video itself, as well as the workbook that comes with it. And then
So
there's a bunch of other stuff. So if you ever want to know where the hell I am, just go to Chosen Eyes 9 on Instagram or my website, choseneyes.com.
now, I did refer to you as doctor, but I don't know if everyone who tuned in knows about your background. Do you want, if you feel like sharing,
Yeah. So I am a doctor of acupuncture and oriental medicine by credential. That's part of how Spider Goddess and I met. I was on the tarot stroll, as I like to call it. I was doing all the markets to help pay my way through medical school. So yeah, I finished my my clinical doctorate in March of 2018. So I'm a baby doctor by credential, but I'm an old biddy in the reader game. So I've been reading for almost just shy of a quarter of a century now. I started early.
Yeah, me too.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, but we both have the similar background of being, mediums and we're being aware of those abilities from really young.
Yeah.
So I think that's just one of those spaces that just called to us really early on. So.
Well, I don't think we can run away from it. Like Arjun, you know what I mean? Like there's certain things that are just like, yeah, no, either make friends with me or get over it, you know? So
Yeah, I know some people who were aware young and were like actually shut off a lot of their abilities or found a way to block that. I never did. Never did.
no. The
I'm
more I
thankful.
tried, the more it went.
Uh-huh. Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, thanks to everyone for showing up. Thank you so much for being part of this Chosen Eyes. I
Thank
really,
you for having me.
I love and appreciate you. So, I think it's 9 o'clock.
Cool.
So thank you so much. I'm going to upload this on here as well as on my YouTube channel, which is Spider Goddess. So
Thank
everyone have
you.
a beautiful night. And if anyone would like to be part of a future episode and you have a topic in mind, please send me a message and let's do it. All right.
Thank you for having me. So beautiful to be a part of it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Bye, everyone.